Is that a bioengineered death lesion on your face? Or are you just happy to see me? And yes, Keith, you are the father. This week, we're searching for a cure in Season 4, Episode 23, The Quickening.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Star Trek Deep Space Nine today. As Mike said, I figured I'd give him a turn.
Yeah, that made me very nervous.
I know. Every time I throw Mike like a quick, hey, why don't we do this crazy thing? It makes him very nervous.
Yeah.
This, he's a reactor. You got to come up with the cool quippy quips, and I just say 10,000 words nobody cares about, including. How excited I am to talk about this episode. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Keith. I can't wait because I have some hot takes. I also want to shout out that though it's a small team here on the patron side of things, Keith, we set a record last night for most concurrent watch-alongs. So listen, folks, if you're out there and you're just wishing for some more goodness, you don't have to just listen to Keith and I. Our patrons have trivia during the episode, they have quips during the episode, they have behind-the-scenes info during the episode. You can watch along with us. Generally, we do Tuesday nights. Sometimes it's in flux, but jump on patreon.com/KNM and become part of the watch-along stream.
Yes, indeed. Super fun. We did our family picnic. We watched Star Trek 1 with some of the folks, some of the patrons. Super fun. Mike almost had a meltdown because of audio problems, but it's fine. We're all family. We had a good time. We have a good time together. That's really what's important.
Sure.
But also, there are other ways that you communicate with us and discuss the things that we discuss, including last week's viewer ratings on To the Death. Here are what you had to say numerically out of 1 to 100 self-sealing stem bolts. And as a patron bonus, I will pick some of your comment to read, or if you want me to read your comment, you can leave us a super thanks here on YouTube, and you can say whatever the heck you want to say. I'll just say it. That's how I work. So Joshua Cronin comes in with a 90 on To the Death, saying, this episode of Deep Space Nine is pretty intense. I love it. Great action scenes and the interaction with the Jem'Hadar. Love the intro of Weyoun, too. Such a great addition to the show. As always, love hearing Mike's guesses into the future of what's gonna come. It's like me watching it all over again in the 90s. Yeah, I think maybe for a season finale. So I'm going to prepare you, so I'm not going to hit you on the fly.
Okay.
So in our season finale of season 4, I want you to pitch season 5.
Okay. Knowing that there are 7 seasons?
Yes, knowing that it is 5 out of 7, I want you to pitch what happens in season 5. Jason Moe gives the episode an 85 and says, well, I guess we can officially cross Quiznos off your list of possible future sponsors. Now, I will quip. I was going to say something Quizni, but I didn't have it. My quibble with Quiznos was only with the manager, not with the company itself or their delicious sandwiches.
Nuance. The news cycle does not appreciate nuance, Keith.
No, it sure as heck does not. So my hypothetical manager will not be a sponsor. Quiznos, still here. I've actually never had a Quiznos sub in my life, and I certainly could use one right now. So Quiznos, if you're listening, I could really like a BLT sandwich.
Also, complete different podcast, just quickly going to say, Super Tuesday, politics, not as interesting when you know who's going to win.
There's a... I have up YouTube TV does. I forget if I've talked about it, but I love their news quad box.
Oh, they do a news quad box too? I thought it was just sports.
No, they do a news one. So you get CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and Fox. Now Fox is really interesting to know like what the dum-dums are saying to the dum-dums. However, I find it's on almost 24/7 here at my house because I'm able to sort of keep an eye on. See, I have a TV right above my 3 monitors here, And so as we're talking, I'm keeping an eye on the live breaking news in the YouTube TV quad box. YouTube TV, if you're listening, we'd also love your sponsorship. Don't check the IPs of our shared account, please.
I was going to say the same thing. I was like, or, just keep sponsoring us
Don't
the other
look too carefully at our account. However, we will happily take your sponsorship money. Anyway, Jason continues after a 45-minute digression into Quiznos. Really enjoyed the new bit of reading a few snippets of patron comments from the prior week. We're doing it right now. I totally forgot that this was the introduction of Wayoon, which was really fun to see. Colomini is so interesting because he's usually so amazing, and then occasionally his acting is weirdly cringe to me. Interesting. Usually it's when he has to chuckle at something. The man has a slightly creepy chuckle, is all I'm saying. And let me tell you, fake laughing, one of the hardest things to do as an actor.
That specific take, I'm going to blame, I know exactly what Jason's talking about. I'm going to blame that on the editor, because they just picked the wrong take of his laugh. They just picked a bad one. That's all.
You think he had some really good laughs in the can somewhere?
No, but they were probably all pretty bad, but they picked a particularly creepy one.
Okay, all right. You are distorting on my end. I don't know if I'm assuming it's not recording.
No, you said that way. There was a blip, but now everything's good back on my side.
Okay, whatever. Doesn't matter.
I'm super loud again.
Well, you're not super loud. You're just sort of you're distorting, like you're clipping. Whatever. It doesn't matter what I hear. It matters what you hear. Yeah. All right. So JD comes in. I love JD's comments because he clearly writes them as he's watching. So there's sort of a stream of consciousness non sequiturs. But he does answer my question of where Worf's mechlith comes from. So Worf keeps his mechlith on his back, although I was looking for it and did not see it, but maybe I just didn't see it. The Jem'Hadar had knives, but took the long blades from the attackers. Okay. Mike making predictions. This is where it gets fun. We used to do a what does Mike think's going to happen segment, and people were like, no, that's boring. Now people are interested because I think you know much more about the show than you ever did. JD continues, this is an overall very strong episode. It does a lot to set up the future. I'm going 89 self-sealing stem bolts. Have you ever noticed that by the time all men are 85, they all look all the same? It's a gradual shift. Be prepared. Yeah, they say married people start to look alike. I think you and I are going to, like if you just eat a whole bunch of more Quiznos, I feel like we could really start looking, and I just continue.
Yeah, I think
continue going a little grayer. I've got it here, but I don't have the full. We can start looking the same.
I'm back to my natural hue now, at least.
I think this is your best look.
I agree. I don't disagree.
I think Silver Mike is definitely the way to go. So, new commenter. I don't know if it's Poe or P.O.
Well, let's judge by the tenor of the comment.
Well, I'll give you the tenor of the numeric value was an 87, so pretty good. I feel Poe. Let's go Poe.
Yeah.
And then feel free to correct us. Harry Pothead coming in hot with a 100. Kevin Miles with a 95. Ryan Chesley gives it a 94. Very high ratings for this last episode. Even interesting that it's a well-regarded episode, but not one of the top 20, top 30, top 40 on IMDb. So there you go. What do you say, as our episode is definitely the slowening, why don't we try to talk about the quickening?
Or as Keith called it as we started, what the hell's the name of this episode?
Yeah, exactly. I can never remember. It's the plague one, whatever. So it aired on, get this, my birthday. I shouldn't say that on the internet. Possibly a birthday of Southern people, not mine. Please don't put that into your verification code when you steal my identity. In 1996, I would have been turning 16. Got my driver's license.
Did you get your driver's license on the day you turned 16?
No, but I think soon thereafter, because I already had my permit in Vermont. You can get your permit at 15.
Me too, yeah.
But I got it soon after, obviously, because in Vermont, you need to drive as soon as possible because my poor parents lost like 6 years of their lives driving me to play practice and such all over the state.
Yeah, I got my permit on my 15th birthday. I got my license on my 16th birthday.
You did?
I did, man. I was ready to go.
Hey, but mission accomplished. You passed it both times. First time.
I did. My
Pretty
sister
good.
struggled. I did not.
And what was the first car you ever drove?
Well, I took my test in my driving instructor. I've told this anecdote many times on the channel. I had a guy named Bob who had one hand.
Right.
And he always wore a leather jacket. And I learned and took my test in his Thunderbird.
Amazing.
But my first car was a white Chevy Lumina that smelled like rotten tomatoes because as I was doing a driving thing with my mom. We got tomatoes, I put them in the trunk, and we forgot they were in there. And it was the summertime, and they liquefied into a PO, if you will. My car, and for the rest of my high school years, smelled like rotten tomatoes.
Don't put that luminol in that Lumina. Well, I'll say this though, I have a very similar story. The first car that I drove reliably was our '87 Plymouth Voyager minivan. Yeah, that's right. Guess how much action I got in the back seat of that? Hard zero.
If the minivan is a rockin', somebody check the tires.
If the minivan is a rockin', Keith isn't driving it. I'll tell you that.
He hit a snow ditch.
Well, no, I was very good driving in the snow because it's Vermont. You get a lot of it, or we did in the '90s. But let's talk about Stinky. So when I was a kid, we took a trip out to Yellowstone with my folks, and we drove out. So it was like a 2.5 week trip, and we didn't want to take our minivan because it was a little old at that point. So we rented one. So we left the minivan in Vermont, hot summer, whatever. Got back from this 2.5 week trip in 85 degree weather to discover that one of us had forgotten a gallon of milk in the back of the minivan from last time we got groceries, and so that was had and then you spend particular
weeks,
flavor.
You spend weeks like buying all kinds of different deodorizers and trying things, but they just add up to like just a different kind of stink.
Oh, just sadness, just sadness. I mean, now clever listeners out there thinking, "Ooh, is that why you didn't get any in the back seat?"
No.
Nope,
no,
nothing to do with the smell. I mean, it might have been my smell, but. Anyway,
hey Keith, do you know what the Germans call how much action Keith got in high school?
What's that?
Deep Space Nine. I'm workshopping it. It was.
I mean, let me ask you: we're what 10 minutes into this? What is our record for swing and a miss jokes in the first 10 minutes of it? Of an episode, because you and I are screwing ourselves into the ground.
I was thinking recently because we have there's a YouTube champion, the YouTube handle Montgomery, and is just desperately attempting to get real time with us.
So many
not
great.
Just watching, but like leaving insightful comments and really participating
on the channel.
Can't wait for you to
catch up.
Yeah, we really appreciate you. But sometimes I hear us talking and I'm like, it's just, we're not doing them justice. The content is not worthy of your hard work and dedication.
Not the show, not the viewers, not our own time, not the time that we take away from our cats who are both annoyed at us right now for not playing with them.
Yep.
All right, well, but we persevere anyway.
Because we committed to it.
We, failure aside, we are going to keep going, much like Bashir here. We are also going to be humbled by this episode, but we will keep going. But you know who was not humbled? The Thugs in Harmony, who put out the top song, The Crossroads.
Oh,
I can't wait to hear it. Yeah.
They had that was their big hit, and I can't remember
sure was. I can't wait to hear what you think the Crossroads are. THA Crossroads.
Oh, it's the THA in that case. There's only one of me, so there can't be harmony, but I'm a thug. I'm at a crossroads. Should I continue this bit or should I stop this bit? It seems like I've committed. People hate my voice, and it is my choice to keep on featuring it. Crossroads.
Wow, we are at the crossroads of canceling ourselves there. All right. Well, I did not remember this, shockingly.
Could someone clip that, put a beat behind it, and really just do it right?
Do you really just want to make sure everybody knows that we're done? What I found interesting about listening to this track is that their thing is kind of rapping, but on pitch. So, which I think is very unique. So they're sort of rapping on pitch in harmony. Very unique style of music, which I don't think I've really heard before or since. So I was like,
Didn't they have another big hit?
I can't tell you.
Still
I'll tell you
creeping?
I don't know. Tell you what was a big hit. Twister, which took in another $37 million in its second week on the top of domination. So, while you're looking up what was going on with Bone Thugs and Harmony, what was on TV that night?
Keith, ABC was airing, it's so funny, it was 8 till 12, so they took 4 hours to air Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman.
Mm-hmm.
CBS had an all-new block of Dave's World, The Nanny, Murphy Brown, Sybil, and Chicago Hope. Melrose Place on Fox was rocking an evening of a movie, Dead Sisters Walking, part 1 of 2, so they were doing a Melrose Place movie that evening. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air also had a two-parter, I Done part 1 of 2 and I Done part 2 of 2, then followed by
You done what?
Yeah, I don't know. And then, of course, continuing David Attenborough's Natural World, this evening on PBS was the inaugural airing of Hippos Out of Water. I don't have a clip. The last week's clip freaked me out.
Thank God.
So no clip.
Thank God. No, that's good. Hippos, I think the most dangerous animal in the world. Kills more people than any other animal.
They're not...
Other than mosquitoes,
no
obviously.
petting zoo. No petting zoo for hippos.
No, don't do it. Well, I know you're all wondering, what was Voyager doing this night? In fact, it was the season finale of season 2 of Star Trek Voyager, which, because they held back like 8 episodes from season 1, this was like, episode 40-something of season 2. It's not. It's like 26.
This is part 1 of 2, Keith. Basics part 1 of 2.
Basics part 1 of 2. So the season premiere of season 3 will be Basics part 2.
Oh, the cliffhanger is a legit in-betweener.
It's a legit betweener. So there you go. Yeah, Voyager. I'm looking forward to us doing Voyager. The first couple seasons will be like eating our vegetables, but we're gonna do some ground laying through these times.
We're both gonna have white hair by that point.
Oh, no question. We're gonna have white hair by the end of Deep Space Nine.
That's fair.
But we will, however, still be alive. Much like the folks in our weekly world news headline, which are telling us that Hitler, Elvis, and JFK all still alive. There's a TikTok thing going around saying that Elvis is now a pastor somewhere. The guy who sort of looks like him and sort of sounds like him. He says he's not.
That's a fun Photoshop there. Fun Photoshop.
That's going to be my new headshot. I think that's kind of his...
I think they're saying he's homeless. Is that saying? The king was photographed outside a shelter in St. Louis.
Oh, boy. Oh. And, they turned his house into a museum, so we can't live there.
Oh, that's a good point. That's why he's homeless.
Yeah, well, there you go. And the CIA is very interested in that, for sure.
Well.
All right. So let us get into The Quickening, which was directed by... You guessed it, Rene Auberjonois. Back, Odo here directing, he last directed Hippocratic Oath. So basically, if it's a Bashir medical story, it's going to be Rene. And here he is on their big giant set that they built for this episode.
Looks great.
And you can see behind him there, which is crazy, using those big giant 35mm cameras to film all of this. This is why this was such an expensive show to do. Because that's like a movie camera.
Yeah.
And why it is perfectly capable of upgrading these into 4K, please and thank you.
Yeah, there's been a more recent push for that, Keith, as I was getting the next season. A lot of discussion in the forums about how a lot of money being spent by HBO to upscale and upgrade a lot of their stuff, and even places that are going back to the negatives and taking shows that were shot in 4:3, but even though they're aired in 4:3, they're still shot 16:9 because that's how the 60 millimeter works. So they could reimagine the framing and actually give you a 16:9 composite. But I imagine that Star Trek is a little less like movies. They probably pan wide for those shots, and then they do pan and scan for home video. Whereas TV, the shots are very much set for
they had to make that decision on Next Gen when they did that, and they realized it wasn't practical to go widescreen with it because you would have to crop, because some of these sets are so tight that immediately out of frame the set ends. And so you wouldn't be able to do that practically.
Yeah, and you have to allow for, a lot of times what you see on screen, or what people like me specifically, you want newest, latest, best. So give me my 4K, give me my 16:9 widescreen. But when you really go back to intent, when a director is in the editing room and when he's on set day of, when I'm filming the take, it's not just Keith's performance. It's not just when are the background actors walking. The whole frame is shot like an artist would think about a painting, right? Each frame is set up. And so by widening that, you're kind of taking away what the director envisioned the scene to look like.
100%. So now, did I, when I watched The Quickening for the first time this week on my big old TV, did I zoom in to make it 16:9? Yeah, I sure did. So
I never do that. I always watch it in 4:3.
Well, I almost always do, and on my computer when I do my recaps and stuff. But when I watch it just for fun, sometimes I do zoom in. So,
but that is just zooming in to fill the screen.
It's like just zooming in.
Yeah,
it's just stretching, or it's cropping, cropping the top and bottom.
Yeah, I mean a lot of these episodes are talking heads, so
it doesn't really matter, but it just feels more contemporary, and with these upscales that we're watching it on, like, you can do that a lot better than the old 480i. Anyway, where were we? This episode was written by Naren Shankar, who last wrote Babel, which means it is now time. We've wasted so much of your time already. Let's do some more of it in everyone's favorite segment.
Waste your time
with what?
With trivial trivia.
So, in the beginning of the episode, very prescient moment where Quark is spamming everybody with advertisements, the picture of Quark on Worf's mug is actually a promotional shot of Armin Shimmerman taken during the production of The Emissary. Of course, the pilot of Deep Space Nine, and at the time, if I'm sure you'll remember, Mike, Shimmerman was still wearing the nose made for Rom, played by Max Grodenchik, which is why the picture looks slightly different from Quark's actual appearance, because they had not finished his nose appliance for the pilot. Which is weird, because, considering all the money they spent on that and the run-up to this was years, you would have thought they would have gotten his nose done by then, but they didn't. So that's why his photo looks a little weird. So all of the outdoor scenes were shot at the Santa Susana Field Laboratory in Ventura County, Southern California, where Rocketdyne had performed shuttle testings that resulted in the Earth being burned and scorched due to the heat and flames of the rocket engines, which helped create the look of the sort of bombed out, burned out world there. So they were reusing, recycling stuff that we'd blown up with rockets, which I think is interesting, as well as sci-fi. So the concept for this episode originated with Ira Steven Behr after watching the 1995 Michael Hoffman film Restoration. The theme of the movie and the idea that Behr wanted to bring to the world of Deep Space Nine was what would happen when an inherently moral doctor is placed in a situation he is unable to control. This led Behr to propose that Bashir should be placed in the middle of a planet-wide epidemic, and no matter how hard he tries, he simply cannot come up with a cure. Also on Behr's mind was the fact that Greg Duffy Long, an office assistant, had just died of AIDS. According to Behr, my wife Laura works closely with the AIDS Project Los Angeles, and the whole AIDS thing was all of our minds, so we just wanted to come up with a disease that breaks your heart. Because he was too busy himself, Behr hired Naren Shankar to write the teleplay. Although Shankar ultimately decided to drop the AIDS metaphor, he said, "I don't give a sense that the people were outcasts or pariahs, which is how AIDS patients were often perceived."
That's smart. I think it's a good choice on their part.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd start having two stories that would be conflicting with each other. But certainly, I mean, gosh, how relevant that was in 96.
And there's
I mean,
some
still
vestiges
is.
to that too. I think the lesions is probably a bit of a vestige
Yeah.
of the.
Yeah. Definitely a much scarier time. Thank you. Thanks, medicine, for helping make that less of a deal.
That's two, probably more, but two major sort of afflictions in our lifetime, Keith, that we've seen from can't do anything about it, killing people, to cured. Well,
or at least you have a chance of managing it
Yes.
way better than you did before. Yeah, that's true. We'll get more into the RFK Jr. of it all as we go in. So most of the later stage disfiguring caused by the blight was done in post-production by multi-layer compositing under the supervision of Gary Hutzel. This meant that on set, rather than elaborate makeup, actors had dots attached to their faces, which allowed their motion to be recorded precisely, and which would allow them to be replicated exactly on a computer. This was an early form of the sophisticated motion capture software and motion capture suits that are regularly used today. I only saw one shot where I thought this was happening. Which is when it
think
goes up in the light. But
across the board, I thought the FX shots from the ships were really good. I thought the makeup and the monster design was really compassionate and tasteful, and had the correct pathos and was not like scary in any sort of way or look hokey. And additionally, I thought all of the composite shots, because there was some interesting composite shots, were really well done, with like actual backlot versus the backdrop composited over. I thought it all looked really great this episode.
Yeah, it's a very interesting looking episode for sure. And lastly, in the special features Hidden File 1, Alex Siddig elaborates on why he loves this episode so much.
We have those.
I
Keith.
love
Did you know that they're in the.
Oh yeah, I should watch them. I loved that show. I mean, I loved doing it, and Renee directed it. He was great at directing that show. I really enjoyed the fact that there's this doctor that turns to the planet, and he's so arrogant and full of himself. He thinks he can cure the planet of all their diseases and probably get whatever the equivalent of the Nobel Prize is. And he fails. He kills a bunch of people, and a bunch of people die because he screwed up. That doesn't happen on TV. The good guys don't screw up, and I love the fact that it all went horribly wrong, and he had to, go back to the drawing board and figure out where he went wrong. Maybe it's because I was terribly arrogant. Maybe it's because I put my own interests above those of the patients. That's a great lesson for any doctor. Which he's already... So Alex Siddig is giving his Stembolt's speech. But before we get any further, we have some thanks and some commercials to do, Mike.
We do. There's been some shuffling. I'm not sure that this is completely accurate, up to date. We might have lost some folks or gained some folks, but to the best of our knowledge, this is pretty clear. Thanks to everyone. I was looking back at it's not a huge number of folks that have contributed to the patrons, but you all give liberally. Not everybody is just giving $1, even though you can get in for just $1. So we appreciate you, really, from the bottom of our hearts. Bryant, Kimball, Beersaw, Casey Clark, Jason Moe, Peter, Benke, Fryan, Rinch. Fryan? Who's Fryan? Fryan, Frank Rinch, Joshua Cronin, Andrew Hayes, Jorge Navoa, and the mysterious Worf's big ol' boot shivs, Charles Babbage, Harry Pothead, CRM, Nikolay Ivanovich Lobachevsky, Delusions at Noon, YouTube viewer James Hubbard, Chesley Anguished. It's nice to see Chesley last night. JD Makes, Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell, Pat, Joshua Cronin, JD, Lutz, Wyatt, all sending us stuff in the mail. We appreciate y'all. Don't forget Quark's Bar. We're going to raid their copy soon. And of course, Chancellor Jen, who is always our matriarch. Thanks to all of you. You can join us, patreon.com/K&M.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff up there. Lots of extra bonus nonsense. Speaking of bonus nonsense, I believe we're getting an ad from Quark. Step into Quark's Bar on Deep Space Nine for the best drinks in the galaxy. Try our signature cocktails and enjoy the lively atmosphere. Quark's Bar, where every night is a party in outer space. AI, that was not great.
Yeah, it gave it a swing.
However, we do have AI for us. Join Keith and Mike on their hilarious journey through the iconic series Deep Space Nine. Tune in to their podcasts for witty banter, insightful analysis, and plenty of laughs. Don't miss a minute of Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine, the ultimate podcast for Star Trek fans.
Especially if you have 30 minutes to kill before they talk about anything relating to Star
anything.
Trek.
I mean, I think AI did a better job with ours than it did for Quark.
Yeah, for sure, this week at least.
I mean, to be fair, you could say that about any podcast, and all of it is a lie about us, but whatever, we'll take it. Our guest stars this week are Ellen Wheeler as Ikoria, Dylan Haggerty as Apron, and special guest star Michael Sarrazin as Trevian. I think it's time for us to travel into our screening. We're trash.
I kept trying to think Truvia is the sweetener, right? It's like the stevia replacement.
Yes, that's right.
That's all I could think about.
Well, I have another one we'll get to. All right. So in our teaser, O'Brien, Odo, and Kira have caught Quark spamming the station with ads for his bar. Come to Quark's. Quark's is fun. Come right now. Don't walk. Run. Which AI actually picked up for one of our other AI Quark's bar ads. Very clever. And hilarious. Then Worf comes in and shows his prune juice mug has also been branded with Quark's face. And a jingle that plays when you drink. Now that, I think, was where they really landed this. Absolutely hilarious. Prescient. And great character work for everybody there. And what a great episode for like Doran and Armin. He's like, hey, we do this one scene.
Yep.
Goodbye. Done for the week. Anyway, Quark is clearly getting some branding advice from Cassidy Yates from prison. Later, Bashir, Dax, and Kira are in the Gamma Quadrant trying out some new sensors. Bashir is leaning into his Season 1 cocky and optimistic Bashir. They get a distress signal from a planet that claims to be under attack just outside of Dominion space. So, naturally, they go to investigate and arrived at a bombed-out planet filled with sick people. The matte painting composite shot is really cool, like you said. And the whole place looks kind of Mad Max-ish if everybody were wearing earth tones as opposed to black leather. But this pullout from this matte painting here, like, it's obviously a matte painting, we get it, whatever. But that's sort of the style of it, and I think they did an excellent job with the composite stuff there, even though it looks animated for a hot second.
It's funny, this screenshot doesn't do it justice, because in motion it actually read a little bit more grounded. Yeah.
But that's the charm of 90s Trek, are the matte paintings. I like it.
So also I think they use it for they use this matte painting and just zhuzh it for when they later on when there's a take of a old artwork of when it was a sparkly civilization. I think they just sort of put a layover on top of it.
Well, I bet they did, because I bet he was painting this before it went wrong. So someone rolls a "Bring Out Your Dead" cart across the screen.
Yeah, bring out your dad.
Then a very sick lady asks them to take her to Trevian. She's just dabbling in the idea of buying a home, but she's not serious yet. Or maybe she's just snooping on her neighbors.
Well done.
You went Sweetener, I went Trulia. Then Drew Sarich comes up and says, there's nothing you can do, she's quickened, go away. All right, so theater nerds, you may or may not know who Drew Sarich is. But if you like spectacular tenor rock singing, hop onto the YouTube and listen to Drew Sarich. Much like David Hasselhoff, he's huge in Germany. But I will be referring to that character as Drew Sarich from now on.
Okay.
Do you not know who he is?
It's not ringing a bell.
Wow. He's done a lot of Broadway stuff. He's you would love. You should just go listen to him on YouTube.
Okay.
It's like I wish.
Is that legitimately him?
No.
Oh, okay. Just looks like him.
No, he looks. No, don't scratch the couch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mike, stop scratching the couch. Well, you know what? The co-host Keith, is annoyed.
My cats have let the couch alone. They have literally scratched an entire hole in the actual wall, like just the wall.
Wow.
A hole.
I mean, I bought this couch when we bought the house, so it's like 3 years old, and I'm already like, it's time. Like, it has already been ruined. Anyway,
we love cats.
We do. Where are we? So, in Act 1, during the commercial break, Bashir confirmed that he and Dax are immune from the disease, and that everybody has, and that the disease that everybody has. And Dax traded a hair clip to a lady to pull them in a rickshaw to the hospital, which I first thought was they were just taking it themselves, and then I realized they took the sick lady, but I was like, why do you need to take a rickshaw to the hospital?
Someone also made a decision, like, I really believe that beat is based on someone's thinking, well, this is going to be sort of a dour episode, so make Terry look cute, get her hair down somehow.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was like, it's probably Renee, like, this is one of the most beautiful people on the entire planet.
Get her hair down.
Yeah, so there you go. So they arrive at the hospital, find out that it's actually just a comfortable place to commit suicide and avoid the horrible days of the blight. Trevian is a guy who runs a comfortable place for people to live out their final days. Like I said, the whole planet is destitute and has very little, but they save up for their whole lives to die in relative luxury. Bashir offers to help find a cure, and Trevian immediately expresses doubt and explains that 200 years ago they were modern and wealthy, but they tried to resist the Dominion, and the Jem'Hadar destroyed their world and started the plague that everyone is born with and will now die from. Interesting that the Jem'Hadar would do that. That feels much more like a Vorta, but maybe they were confusing it.
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions I had here, and I've had time to think about. So in the actual moment, I was a little not taken aback. I was a little surprised at Bashir's stark opinion about the Kevorkian-ness of this whole thing. And you would think that the feelings about euthanasia, or like at least that choice on your side as a human being, would have in the future would be a little bit more accepted. But I have to look through the lens of two things. One, in 96, that was not the case. This was actually smack dab in the middle of the Kevorkian stuff.
Right, sure. All that debate, yeah.
Yeah, he was tried 4 times between 94 and 97. So this is like legitimately in the middle of that. I looked it up. B.
Wow, look at you.
B, if you think about in the future where, especially if you're on the side of the Federation where you have access to all of these cures and all these advanced medical techniques, the idea that anybody would submit to losing the battle against a disease without fully exploring the medical options, I can understand his take.
Yeah, I mean, I think I read it as more of his confidence that he can solve this. That these people are, I think it's less about whether or not you have the right to ease your own suffering. It's that I'm such a genius, this suffering is unnecessary. And so, like, this is like, I've got the cure right behind this door here. What are you doing?
I also think that the way the sort of the lore we learn about the Jem'Hadar here, or the Dominion, is understandably yet somewhat frustratingly vague, right? As I have questions that I think would have made for interesting plot points that I guess I'll bring up a little bit later, but I'm interested to hear about what your take on some of that is, because it does guide my opinions. But that all said, what I do enjoy about first appearance of Activia is how we're left unsure of how we're supposed to view him. Bad guy? Good guy? Heart in the right place guy? Hard to say at this juncture.
Yeah, and I think we're going to learn how similar he and Bashir kind of are, and how they are both motivated by good intention, but also ego. And I think the final beat with Trulia is very revealing about that. So anyway, we will continue.
Also, is he related to Steve Buscemi?
Well, he was actually, I think he was an actor in They Kill Horses, Don't They? Which has a similar theme, and I think that's why they cast him. Anyway, so Trevian says, "Don't try to help. You should leave." Bashir is horrified. Trevian just says, "I take the pain away. Go away." Later, we see a young pregnant woman walk down the giant outdoor set and looks at Bashir. Rarely do we get the sort of scale of an outdoor on-location set here, but I guess they had this scorched earth, literally, and they just like, oh, let's build a set out here. It looks great. Yeah, there it is. Like, really cool to see how much money they put into building this, as well as all those extras. That's a ton of extras. So she's looking for Bashir. Dax says she found the repeater sending the distress signal. And apparently it's been going off for 200 years. So that's what they heard, was we're under imminent attack right now, but it's been 200 years since. And I wonder why they never turned it off. Because I would think that people are coming back all the time responding to that. Or maybe I guess they're in a more empty part of space than we're thinking.
Space is this just in, Keith. Space big.
Space big. Yeah, it's not called lack of space.
That's right. It's not called small.
The number of times we have failed. I think we're going to break a record. We're actually going to break a record.
How many episodes of this have we done?
We're nearing 100, I think.
Yeah, well, our distress repeater has been going off for 100 episodes, and no one has come, Keith.
Oh, most of the distress is from the point of our viewers.
Yeah, that's true.
So the woman, Ikoria, who witnessed the scene at Trevian, asks for Bashir's help. She's afraid that she's going to die before her baby can be born. Then Kira calls and says there are 2 Jem'Hadar ships coming this way. Uh-oh.
That might be why nobody's coming to help usually.
It's quite... that actually is a good explanation for that. But it turns out to be a red herring. They're just on patrol. But Kira says... Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to fill this wormhole for us currently.
All right,
because it makes sense. They make reference later that the whole reason the Jem'Hadar did this was as a sort of proof of concept of, if you defy us, we're going to lay this type of torture upon you. So if that's the case, then clearly they want people to see this. So my guess is the Jem'Hadar have some agency in keeping that repeater going so that people come, realize they can't help, and that they shouldn't F with the Jem'Hadar or the Dominion and leave.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, it is a public stance that they're doing here. All right, I'll buy that.
The mark of Cain, right? That's ostensibly.
Yeah. So, Kira says, let's get out of here and send a Federation mission later. But Bashir wants to stay and help. And Kira's like, okay, but I'm going to go hide in a nebula. Bashir says, come back in a week. And Kira just nods and smiles and doesn't say, what? So, Mike, here's the important question. For the main thing I thought about all episode was, what is Kira doing sitting on a runabout for a week by herself?
She got stuff to do. She's busy.
In a runabout. Like what, does she have Netflix?
Hey, listen, we got two astronauts got to go walk upon the moon, and somebody had to stay up in the LEM waiting for to rendezvous with them to take them home. Somebody's got to stay behind, Keith.
Well, sure, no, I
the getaway driver is bored until he ain't bored anymore.
I'm just curious, how does she occupy her time for a week in the runabout?
Well, I mean, Worf lives on the other ship, so she could.
But he can leave. She's just wandering around and it's just like if I lived in my basement for an entire week.
My guess is that runabout got Google.
Got Google.
It's got Google.
Yeah, I'm sure she's got Netflix or whatever.
You ever been a temp, Keith? What do you do for those 8 hours?
I started writing my first novel.
Yeah, she got plenty to do, is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, fair enough. I won't make any of the adult suggestions I was wondering about. Hope they have a bathroom.
She's just fine, Keith. Let's get back to the plot here.
All right,
there are people suffering on the planet.
Also, does nobody need any of these people on the station?
We talk about this every week. I talk about this.
I know, but like, it's like a couple of days. This is like a week.
Yeah, but sometimes they go off and like take the entirety of the head of the fleet and take them to a war zone. So I mean,
On a mission. Anyway.
This is big.
Yeah. So we see another Mad Max painting, and Bashir arrives at the home of Ikoria. Bashir starts to set up shop and start work. Dax discovers a very mediocre painting of what life used to be on the planet. Her dead husband painted it, and they're all too polite to say it sucks. Bashir starts sciencing. What did you see it?
This poor woman is dying, and her husband's
She didn't
dead.
paint it. Yeah, he died before he learned how to paint.
Wow, man. Hot take, just so you know, I really
Go
like
back
this.
and look at
I really
it.
like this episode.
I like the episode too.
Well,
but
then
the painting
stop.
sucks.
Then you better close your butthole because you're shitting all over it.
So Bashir starts sciencing, and he enjoys her marveling at his doctoring while leaning around her somewhat creepily. More time passes. He succeeds at isolating the virus. Ikoria decides to share all the food she's hoarded for her death with Bashir and Dax. Later, Bashir is having a hard time getting volunteers who have quickened for his experiments when he runs into Drew Sarich again, who now has quickened.
Also, I want one of these.
Yeah,
That'd be
one
a
of those
cool
medical
toy to play
deals.
with. Yeah.
It's super cool, and I stared at it for a long time because like these props. This is where the creativity of the people working on it, from the prop designers, they're just taking random stuff and slapping stickers on it and putting it all together, put a light in it, and it looks amazing on screen. But you expect, like, oh, if I got that screen-used prop, it's going to look like this full working thing. And it's, they make it out of just stuff they have kicking around. And it's just really creative what they do. So later, Bashir is having a hard time getting volunteers who have quickened for his experiments. So he needs people who are actively quickening to do his experiments. So what he's asking them to do is give up this going out, comfortable that they've been planning for their entire lives to be part of this experiment. And he runs into Drew Sarich again, who has now indeed quickened. So Sarich is pissed because he's used to people coming in and pretending to have a cure and exploiting people for it. Because of course, the miracle cure all over the place. Have you tried eating a light bulb? Have you tried injecting bleach? But Ikoria sticks up for Bashir, and a crowd gathers. Then Bashir does the miracle cure like a faith healer and cures a child's broken arm, which is real handy on Star Trek to have just wave a beam over it and you can fix a broken arm. However, it's legit. He actually does it. Trevian shows up and warns everyone that a cure is not as easy as fixing a broken arm, and that many have tried and failed. Bashir says, look, I'm not making any promises. And Trevian threatens him with a horrible death if he makes false promises, which, understandable, considering the situation that they're in. I'm sure a lot of people, who is more susceptible to getting their hopes up than an entire culture with the plague?
Yeah, I thought that line was going to have a little bit of follow-up somewhere. Like, what is the... But, like, I was confused as to whether there was actual threat in that line, or if that was just a way to keep us a little bit on the fence about is he a good guy, bad guy?
Yeah. Well, I think it's... Yeah, obviously there's an alternative episode here where when he fails, they're going to sacrifice him to the whatever.
Because spoiler alert, I think the best part of this episode for me is that there is no bad guy, right? There is. Yeah. They all want the same thing ultimately, or they both have they're all altruistic at heart.
And they're all reacting to the situation like one would.
But I think that they wanted that to feel a little bit twisty, so they kept inserting a bit of potential nefarious-ism.
Nefarious, yeah. Well, I think what's interesting here is that nobody's really the bad guy, but everybody is flawed, including Bashir and including Trevian here. And I think we sort of see their fundamental flaws as well as their general goodness. So it has some subtlety that you don't see often a lot on television. So in Act 3, later Bashir is struggling. He didn't get enough tissue samples and he's frustrated. Ikoria talks about having a culture that has come to worship death, which is an interesting thought for cultures dealing with horrible life expectancy. I bet we saw this a lot during, the medieval times and Black Death, and in cultures where there is a great deal of disease or war or any other prolonged horror that happens that makes life expectancy be so short. But then Dax comes in with a bunch of volunteers, including Sarich. A couple of days later, Bashir and Dax continue treating now a bunch of people suffering after the quickening. But it's not working, and not even the pain killing is making much of a difference. Which is hard to imagine that the Federation wouldn't, their tech, they might be able to cure the disease, but you've got to think they would be able to make sure there's no pain. But, I think the counter argument to all of this, why is this so hard for Bashir, is the Dominion genetically engineered this thing. Yeah. So the technology of this disease is not the same as the technology on the planet.
Well, I brought up in my watch along what I think is interesting is that, there's a sect of conspiracy theory that is totally anti-technology, the 5G waves, the this, the that.
Right,
it's
right.
all, infecting us. Forget the part of it that's it's reading our thoughts or whatever. I just mean it's making us sick, right? And the fact that they blow this out here is pretty interesting. I think that there's a subtle commentary. I don't think it goes too deep, but there is an argument that there's something to be said for potentially the Federation and our advanced civilizations over-reliance on technology to be the medicine, right? So in this case, it's bioengineered to be anti-tech. The tech is what makes them sick,
right.
Which
sure, yeah.
is sort of the double-edged sword that Bashir is working with here.
Well, and it speaks to the level of sophistication of the Dominion's disease design.
Right.
And how that it's not just everybody dies. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's people live, and they live long enough to keep the society going, but be perpetually suffering, and to all the things that you use to be healed from it are, cause you to go, the tech makes it worse. Mm-hmm. So it's a really ingeniously evil design to this disease here, which speaks to, how advanced the Dominion is, and also how freaking ruthless it is.
Yeah, and it's also really smart because when you think about it, and I have a question later, but obviously the Dominion, as we discussed earlier, space is big, right? So they don't have probably, and we've learned that the Dominion's hold over the Jem'Hadar and various things perhaps isn't as absolute as we had thought, and so from their perspective, they don't have the time or resources probably to observe every place they have their dominance asserted, right? So what better way to keep people under their thumb than a bioengineered disease that's going to last for generations rather than having to continually check in or observe,
Which ties into bioengineering as their thumb, mm-hmm. the same way they do with the Jem'Hadar.
Yeah, it's their thing.
It is using genetics and bioengineering is one of their most powerful tools. Which, again, makes the Dominion such an interesting and scary mm-hmm. enemy. Because you never know what they're working on, and it might be subtle. You might not discover it until later. It might be whatever. They're able to exert control in lots of different ways, down to your genetic code. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, Bashir has however created an antigen, and he's really confident and wants to wax eloquent about how important this moment is in medical science, but Dax tells him to give it some more time. Later, Bashir and Ikoria have a chat about bedside manner as he vaguely continues hitting on her. And he tells the story of his first patient, his teddy bear Kukalaka. And his game is way better. And he admits, of course, that he still has Kukalaka. Do you still have your teddy bear and or blankie or whatever it was?
I don't. I didn't really have. I have my Cabbage Patch dolls from when I was a kid, so that kind of counts. But my brother has his Snoopy from when he was like 3 days old. So it's like 50. Yep. It's 50 years old now.
I still have my blanket, which is now just a bunch of threads that I also was got in the hospital, and that was my BFF when I was a child, and it's not hanging up on a shelf because it looks like tatters, but I do have it. I do have it in my bureau somewhere, so still got it. I'm just like Bashir. But the lovely tales of the Kukalaka are interrupted when Sarich starts seizing. So Act 4, something is causing the virus to mutate. Everyone is suffering deeply. Bashir scans him with his tricorder, and the blight spreads rapidly across his face. Pretty decent effects for 1996 television, and I think that's what they're talking about in terms of the rotoscoping over the face. I don't think there's any other shots where they're doing that. I think they were overstating that in the companion, because everything else looks like practical makeup to me. Anyway, still looks great. Bashir realizes that their equipment is making it worse and the effects are cumulative. And everyone starts screaming at once, and they run around turning off technology. And then they go around giving away painkillers like they're the Sacklers. Sarich dies. Trevian shows up, as he always does when things look bad, and he hands out the poison to some of the dying, which is merciful. Bashir realizes he's caused them all to suffer for nothing. It's the end of the week, and Bashir stands in a room literally full of corpses and tries to figure out what went wrong. I didn't notice this until the second watch around. Everywhere around him are bodies.
Body bags, yeah.
Body bags. And it was like, oof. I don't think I'd ever clocked that.
So it's like a 100% fail at this point.
100% fail. Yeah. They killed everybody. And it's not that they died because they were going to die. It's that they died suffering. And without the help, with Trevian giving a chance to die before the pain gets too bad, and they get to spend time with their family, they get to eat their feast or whatever. They just all died horrible because of this.
Wormhole, though.
Okay.
They all die except Cora.
Mm-hmm. Well, she hasn't quickened yet.
But these all were people who had quickened because they're the people that Dax brought in.
That's right.
Gotcha.
That's
okay,
right.
Great.
So she was okay until the end because she hadn't quickened yet.
Yep. All right.
Fixed it. Woo! So Bashir admits that he was excited to brag about his accomplishments, and he has been profoundly humbled. He says Trevian was right. There is no cure. The Dominion made sure of that. But I was so arrogant, I thought I could find one in a week. And Dax says, maybe it was arrogant to think that. But it's even more arrogant to think that there isn't a cure just because you can't find it.
So you want to have a pity party? Dax is here to tell you, nuh-uh.
Whew! Just kicked him right in the dick. I mean, but I think it's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like he needed humility. I mean, he needed to be humbled here, and he only got to the first level of it, and she finished it off, which is, I think, that's a good friend.
Yeah.
Didn't feel good, I imagine, but important. So the next day, a dejected Bashir wanders around the street and runs into Ikoria, and we find out that her quickening has indeed now started. And it looks like, so go back to that. So this is the mural that her husband did, that the little one did.
Hold on.
You can find it.
I can do it.
You can do it. I believe in you. I believe you can do it. There it is. So it's clearly better than the other one, but I'm wondering how much of this looking wonky is AI. Because like all the lines, because it looks all quirky and wonky there, Squigglepuss anyway. And I wonder if that's AI. I have to go back and watch the original footage to see whether or not that's extrapolation from AI or that's the actual
My understanding of
painting.
the AI project, I did a lot of reading upon it, is it's not just like put it through Topaz video upscaler. Like they do go through and make certain passes for different episodes and scenes. I don't know how. It took them years to do it, so.
Yeah. I mean, look, it is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a criticism at all, but it's just how did it interpret what little data they had there on that matte painting. Anyway. So, unfortunately, Corey looks like she's going to die before her baby can be delivered. So, Bashir, makes an agreement to stay on the planet and have Dax and Kira leave him behind with more supplies for an unforeseeable amount of time so that he can continue working. In Act 5, late at night, Bashir, alone with Ikoria, discovers that her body has gotten rid of all of the antigens that he gave her. The next morning, she's still suffering, but the baby seems like it's coming soon, but not soon enough. It's supposed to come in 6 weeks. But Ikoria knows she won't make it that long. So Bashir plans to induce labor 2 weeks from now. Still later, Trevian wakes up Ikoria and offers her a chance to end her suffering. And the babies. Which is interesting here, that is like, the baby, let's kill you both. But she, of course, wants to give her baby a chance to live. And it was sort of like a weird beat there to have Trevian. I mean, like, yes, he came to ease her suffering, but like she's so close to being able to deliver the baby. It's weird that
I kind of just read it as, because he does say, he's like, your baby will have known nothing but peace, right? And maybe he has some knowledge of what happens to premature preemies with the blight.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. Anyway, so
now you have to, because we have to allow him an arc too, right? So my guess is it's sort of peaks and valleys, right? Or it's polar opposites. Whereas Bashir's hubris was in thinking he could do everything. I think the reverse hubris on Trevian's side is that he has submitted to the point where he just would rather kill everybody early. Like it's just all suffering.
When all you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. So Bashir and Trevian talk. Bashir says, I don't understand why you're so obsessed with death, Trevian. From what I've seen, you've lived with the blight longer than anyone else. And Trevian says, yes, and I've seen more suffering than anyone else. Which I think helps answer the question. Some more time passes, and Ikoria does deliver the baby. When Bashir sees the baby, there's good news. He sees that the baby does not have the blight. He hasn't created a cure, but he has created a vaccine. He will save the planet in a generation, though everyone alive before the baby will still die of the blight. So, their culture can survive long enough for right-wing conspiracy theorists and soccer moms who did their own research on Reddit start a movement to get rid of it, and then they all die again.
I mean, or it's great sci-fi writing.
Oh, it's terrific sci-fi writing. I'm just saying, sci-fi real life will definitely find a way to ruin this.
Did you know that patrons also get a cut of the episode with our editorial removed?
No. We're 100 episodes into this. You are used to if you are not on board with our editorial, you are long gone.
Right-wing conspiracy doesn't exist up there, Keith, because they don't get the internet. Remember, there's no tech allowed.
Well, that's true. That's true. But they're going to survive long enough to have it back.
Yeah, right. Word of
they'll
mouth.
be
We all know
cured.
word of mouth is the better solution.
I mean, RFK Jr. is going to that's going to kill you. No, whatever. That's my RFK Jr. Impression.
He's got emphysema.
Well, it was terrible. Anyway, Trevian offers to help manufacture and distribute the vaccine. He takes the baby into the crowd to spread the news, and perhaps take the credit. And this is where we see Bashir, newly wiser, and more humble, stands to the side while Trevian holds the baby in the crowd. And we see that their sort of defining Achilles' heel is the same for both of them. They both have the ego and desire for attention and acclaim, but Bashir has learned something, and Trevian is like, here I am holding the baby aloft like the savior of the planet. Very interesting character development here. So later, back in the station, Bashir continues to research, trying to save everyone else. Cisco comes in to congratulate him, but Bashir is still obsessed with finding a cure. It's going to be a long night. And that is the Quickening. What do you say we discuss in everybody's favorite segment?
Count to 4. AlamarEmmys, then one more. AlamarEmmys, it's AlamarEmmys time!
All right. So, first off, I was going to do this at the top of the show, but then we got into a whole bunch of other nonsense. Before we do the AlamarEmmys, I have a confession to make. And I just thought about it this week, and I was like, you know what? I need to tell the viewer something. Give me a one shot.
Oh, crap. A one shot. All right.
Yeah. So, as you know, as the big Star Trek and Deep Space Nine nerd that I am, I've loved this show. It's been great. But I did not watch it all when it came out because college happened and whatever. So I didn't see it until a little bit later in life. When you ask, specifically, and how did I watch it? Well, I watched this. Yeah, there it is. The first time I watched Deep Space Nine seasons past season 3 was on the subway on my way to work in New York City in like 2004, 2005. And Mike, how did I watch it? And this is going to break your brain specifically because like highest, best, greatest. I watched the first time I ever saw the last 4 seasons of Deep Space Nine. I watched it on my iPod video.
Wow.
On the train. On this exact iPod video, still working, by the way. A little bit worse for wear, but I literally watched it on the train on this iPad video. So the first time I went through all of these things, watched these huge battle sequences, watched these incredible characters, it was on this tiny, tiny screen, which is so much smaller than my phone today. Like that is how small this is like the U2 edition or whatever it was back then. So anyway, I thought you would all enjoy that is how I first saw these things. So
how far you've come, Keith. How far you've come.
I know how far technology. I was sad that none of them were still loaded on it. I must have reformatted or something like that. But here it is. This is now 15 some odd years old, almost 20 years old now. Still works.
You know, one of the big bonuses of that technology is that was one of the first real applications of SSDs because there's no spinning hard drive in there.
Well, that's why it still works.
Yep.
And that's why it was so expensive. Anyway, I thought that was interesting when I found that going. So, Mike, tell me about wormholes, about the Quickening.
So, I really only have one that's kind of been, I can't quite figure out yet. The way that Trevian in the beginning explains sort of the Dominion's plot makes a bunch of sense, right? There's the whole point of it and what they were trying to accomplish. But the only thing I don't understand is that in that explanation, there seems to be a tacit understanding that ... or else, right? If you so it feels like they give up looking for a cure because they don't want to piss off the Jem'Hadar or the Dominion, right? We don't want to. They clearly have this advanced because my point is that when we get to the end and Bashir shows that, oh hey, here's the future generations are going to be absolved of this, they're so excited about that. And I'm like, oh, so hold on. There's no or else from the Jem'Hadar or from the Dominion saying like, oh, and by the way, if you do cure this, we're going to just F you another way?
I don't think so. I actually
So
the
all
way
of
I
the people that have come, and he says many have come before Detroit, none of them figured out this. So Bashir is super genius then.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think the reality is I think the reason they gave up is that they literally tried for 200 years.
Okay.
And internally, think about, like, especially if the generations only live to like 30 years old, in 200 years, how many generations have just come to accept this and like have genuinely profoundly given
It's
up?
sort of like
There's
us
nothing
in
we can do
Congress,
about
right?
this.
We've had 200 years at it, and we just can't figure
Right.
that ish out. So
And we're like, oh, okay, it's just going to be horrible, and we
Yeah.
give up.
I gave up in 40 years.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, yeah, and I think that I don't think the Dominion cares anymore. I don't think that, like, they're even paying much attention, because it was they're a warning. And I don't think Dominion has beef with them anymore.
And I guess one generation isn't going to give them enough time to like build up their super technology again.
Yeah, I think if they, are able to get themselves on their feet, the Dominion probably like, so you want in now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And go from there. It's a pretty good warning. So and like Dominion might have forgotten about it. Like they don't even like, it's like they don't necessarily. I don't think this planet is like giant on the thoughts of the Dominion. I think it speaks to just how ruthless they are, not necessarily how much they care about this particular planet.
Yeah. Okay.
My only wormholes are just like, does anybody care that half of the staff of the station just like was supposed to be out for an afternoon and is gone for a week, and then your chief medical officer is gone for what, like a month?
Yeah, but that's like every other episode.
But not for a month, like a couple of days, sure.
It just doesn't bother me as much. It's such
like a month.
That's such a trope that it's not even.
Mike, what if you decide to take off for work for a month?
Listen, we took off Geekly for a month, and only like 6 people have brought it to our attention.
Only 6 people watched that show.
That's fair. We do owe them.
I mean, it'd be more efficient just to call them and like talk about what we watched on TV. Less embarrassing to our algorithm.
Oh, please. Our algorithm. Okay.
No, it messes it up, man. I'm telling you. All right. Anyway.
Hard disagree. What else we got? We got best moments.
Yeah, what was your best moment?
There's so many good moments. I want to shout out. I think, what's the name of the actress playing Ikoria here?
I will tell you. It is Ellen Wheeler.
I think she is absolutely extraordinary in this episode. I think she's able to develop like an understated chemistry with Bashir that could be interpreted in a lot of different ways, but I don't think from her end it ever crosses the line to flirty flirts. I think that there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of pathos, there's so much in her performance that I think it's understated in the best of ways. Her caring about the other people, her just search for hope, her search for wanting something more. I just think it's excellent. I also think Truvian, whatever the heck that character's actual name is, really also had a great performance. Was asked a little bit more because was asked to be a little bit more of a tweener. Even though I think ultimately we learned that he isn't, right? He's just a guy who kind of submitted and probably was a lot more like Bashir earlier and has just had it beat out of him.
Yeah.
So for an episode, and then also the guy who sort of sacrifices his comfortable death for a painful death in the pursuit of this, I thought he gave great performance too. So if we're 3 for 3 on guest stars, understanding what the assignment was and knocking it out of the park. So that's sort of my best moment, is casting, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my best moment is the shot of Trulia holding the baby in the crowd and panning over to Bashir standing half heroic, half humbled, watching from the side. I thought it was a really great shot that Renee Aubergenois directed that. Like, and it's a crane shot, right? We see the decision-making process of both. And I thought that was really excellent to see.
Oh, sorry. Continue.
It's just great. It's just great storytelling, great visual storytelling that Renee did.
And think about the legs of that too, because not only are you giving hope to a people, but I would probably, if you really play it out, I'd probably argue that much like myself and a few other people that are deciding to have kids or not deciding to have kids on that planet at that time under those circumstances, a lot of people are probably like, we should not bring kids into this world. A, they might not make it. And B, why would we bring them into a world of suffering?
They're gonna die horribly, right?
Think about the 60s, right? The 60s sexual revolution coming to that planet in the next couple months, right? Like,
there's gonna be one giant.
Yeah, there's like the only people who are gonna survive are the babies. So
orgy.
start making some babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
It's just one big orgy.
shall we stemble it?
Let's do it.
Get some stem bolts. Hell yeah, they are self-sealing. Here are some stem bolts for you.
So, it's not to take too far of a walk around the block. I've talked about it on the channel a bunch of times, but I'll bring it up again. In my life, you know, Keith and I talk about therapy a lot, and I would say that if I had to boil down the discoveries I've made in therapy that have helped me the most, the number one bullet on that list would be that at any given time, you don't feel one color. Often, I think the challenge for me has always been I can't decipher what it is I'm feeling, right? Am I this? Am I that? Am I this? Am I that? Am I that? And that confusion in trying to figure it out and isolate it is, I get lost in that. When in the reality is, once you start to accept that you can feel and be and exist with multiple things at one time, and it's a matter of becoming comfortable with that, maybe identifying some of them, but recognizing that it is a palette and not a color, relieves a lot of tension. And one thing about media, television specifically, is because we're short on time, often stories get boiled down to it's this or it's that. This is a good character. This is the bad character. They have conflict, so-and-so wins. And that, especially those, I would say, of science fiction tastes, people who want a little bit more of challenge from their media, it can be very boring. And so when a show like this, even in an episode that isn't really part of the main continuum, it's a sort of like a side adventure, right? Discusses these types of, not just a plague, but euthanasia, your right to euthanasia, the right to decide when your last moments are and how you want to spend them, whether you, the hubris involved in attempting to, there's so much in this episode and no clear answers. In the beginning, you're trying to figure out, is this Truvian guy bad? What are his motivations? Clearly Bashir is going to cure the disease. Clearly, this lady is going to survive with her baby. Clearly, all of these. What you're not expecting is, oh no, there are consequences. He rushed along this situation, and so there is a room full of body bags. Oh, she is going to die, but hey, the baby's going to live. And hey, maybe they both, even the good guy doctor and even the quote-unquote doctor who has been put into submission, they both suffered from hubris, and that hubris caused suffering, right? And perhaps some of the people that he helped not suffer ended up ending their lives prematurely if maybe they could have, and even at the end, you're not left with a happy, yes, they will survive into the future, but much like Bashir, we know that there was cost. And that is just great. That is just great. A great plot. I thought the way the plot was carried out was awesome. I kept saying, if they kill this baby, it's losing 10 stem bolts. They can't kill this baby. And they didn't. I thought they might.
But they killed literally everyone on the entire planet except for the baby.
And I just thought that the guest stars to a man were excellent in this episode. I thought the direction was excellent. I loved that even with 40-some minutes, Renee let a lot of scenes breathe. He let there be space, not just in the scenes, but in the shots. Wide open spaces, a lot of empty space. Just great work. And Listen, I give Siddig a lot of BS when he deserves it. Let us learn from this episode. Just stop making him have to be funny in any moment. Like, don't give him comedy stuff. Just let him do this type of thing. It's great. My only nitpick with this episode, really, is I think they sort of neutered Dax a bit. They didn't really give her anything to do. She's sort of like nurse Dax who doesn't really do anything.
Right, and she's the science officer.
Yeah.
She's a tremendous scientist.
She has one great scene where she kind of teaches. She's the human in the episode where she teaches about bedside manner.
Well, she says, like, I'm here to translate for you. On a human level.
It sort of sucks to me, like, because that pair up, we don't get to see Bashir Dax a lot, and I thought it would be a cool pair up, and I was a little let down by her performance. That said, Keith, you ready for my super hot take?
Let's hear it.
Just because I love gray storytelling, this is one of my favorite episodes of the season.
Really?
I'm going to give it 93 self-sealing stem bolts an A+.
Well, 93 is an A-.
Well, my school was there. Well, no, I guess it was an A. Actually, getting an A with 93 until you hit A, so it's an A.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, I love how you set this up. I'm going to use the exact same format that you did in terms of, like, what did this episode speak to about what you've learned in therapy? And because it did for me too, although it's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on the emotional side of how do I, like, hold different opposing emotions at the same time. For me, this is an episode about humility and learning what you can control and what you can't, what you can fix and what you can't, and how a lack of humility about your ability to control the world around you and the people and problems can cause real damage that you don't mean. And I think that for me, I continually am going on a similar journey that Bashir has, with a sort of lack of humility in terms of, like, oh, I can fix this, I can control this, I can make this better, and continually learning that my path to health is realizing that I have much less control than I think I do, and that what I need to learn is to separate what is in my control and what isn't in my control, and accept it, and just have a little bit more humility that maybe my super genius can't cure this disease if I try hard enough, and that my trying that hard sometimes has negative consequences, and whether that's emotional, whether that's practical, whether that, whatever it is, I am prone to the same weakness that Bashir has. And I think it's really good to see that humility there, dovetailed with the episode says, yes, you need to learn that, and you are not some all-powerful being, but also sometimes you can't. And I think that's life, and trying to figure that out. Sometimes maybe you can make that difference. Maybe you can be that person who helps in whatever that way is or whatever, and continually navigating that in life is really, really good meat. That's really good stuff. So I think...
Well,
so I identify.
Sorry to insert. Yeah. Like I was watching a lot of space stuff this week after the last moon landing, and you think about when you set large goals, scientifically, specifically.
Yeah.
Getting to Mars or whatnot, and you're one of the scientists or people working on the project somewhere in the beginning or the middle, knowing that you probably won't even live to see the fruition of the mission, and yet you're still part of it. Talk about humbling, right? So if you're one of the people whose the achievement is the end result, shouldn't be always in the fight. Right.
No, and it's interesting. And it's part of the flawed nature of humanity and the fact that we're temporary. Mm-hmm. Right? And all of that is part of this episode. It's all wrapped up in that. And I think this is a defining episode for Bashir's character in a lot of different ways. It is sort of like both his biggest success, but also his biggest biggest growth through struggle. And
Consistent
growth through
too, because
humility.
remember that episode where he was up for the award or whatnot?
Right.
And we see he has that sort of desire, even though he wants to feign humility at times, he's got that desire of achievement.
Absolutely. He wants to win the Nobel Prize. He wants to win the Pulitzer. He wants to win that award. And, that is going to be one of the things that he's going to wrestle with his entire life. And I think that this just makes him a much more complex, much more interesting, and much more flawed character, even though he is a genius. Like, he's clearly is able to achieve amazing things. So, but I think it's growth for him. And I think sort of Odo and Bashir are the ones who have grown the most as characters so far, and have changed the most as characters. And their sort of humanity and their flaws are right there on the surface, and it's really interesting to watch them navigate that. So, all in all, I think it's a good episode. I think it's an important episode for Bashir. It's not one of my top 10 episodes. I think it's very solid. I don't necessarily enjoy watching it in a way that I do a lot of the other stuff, but I think it's a good one. So for me, it gets a very solid, very good, but not, I can't wait to see it again, 85 self-sealing stem bolts.
Okay.
That's what you get. That's what you get from me. Can't wait to watch it on my iPod. It's not an iPod Shuffle. This is the video iPod. Very fancy.
Such a satisfying sound and click as you
rotate. The click and the sensation of clicking through that. Oh, it was great. Anyway, thank you so much for watching The Quickening. Now, if you're wondering, how did this do in the world of IMDb? It gets a 7.6, which makes it the 81st out of 173 episodes. Almost exactly mediocre, straight down the middle, average episode of Deep Space Nine, according to IMDb, which we don't always agree with.
No.
Up next, we'll be discussing Body Parts.
The penultimate episode. The
penultimate episode of Season 4. Going to be fun. Thank you so much for watching. Check out our other shows. Look at my Star Trek toys. Check out Out of Practice podcast. Go back and watch some of those K&M Geekly episodes because Mike,
Oh, they're coming back. Keith doesn't agree, but I'm putting my foot down.
They're ruining our algorithm, but you're not. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back next week with another episode of Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.